Welcome everybody to the Insights and Analytics Talks hosted at IE Business School. My name is Norman Kurtis. I am Dean of Programs of IE Business School, and I welcome our audience here in our classroom, many students from our Masters in Market Research and Consumer Behavior, plus other attendees. Today's topic is behavioral science and economics, new routes to explain human behavior and to generate insights. This is a very long topic, okay? So, I was trying to summarize it in my own mind to make sure I understood exactly what we wanted to achieve today. And I think there's a couple of key questions, and we'll soon introduce our panelists who will help us in this matter. Firstly, what is the difference between behavioral science and behavioral economics at a very high level? And then to understand the impact on insights, on research, and on the industry, on clients, etc. So we can go through those with our panelists. So, our distinguished speakers today, it's a bit confusing, okay, because both of them are called Alvaro, okay, so anyway. Alvaro Gaviño, to my right, to your left. So he's the behavioral economics global leader at BBVA for the last 5 years, although he spent almost 20 years, 19 at BBVA.
Even though I look really young.
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but fine, good. And he has a bachelor in computer science, okay? I'm not going to go through his bio because otherwise it would take up 35 of the 40 minutes we have for this. And to my left, I have Álvaro Marín. Welcome, Álvaro.
Hi.
Álvaro is behavioral economics leader at The Cocktail, which is not a bar, by the way, okay? And has spent many years in the industry, started his career at P&G briefly, and then has worked for Metra6, Sinovate, and Análisis y Investigación. He's an industrial engineer and almost also a psychologist. So welcome, Álvaro.
Hi.
So, to kick it off, we're going to start with Álvaro Gaviño. Behavioral science.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's a hot topic?
Well, it's kind of easy to explain. It's just something that it started at the administrations of some countries, but it has jumped to the private sector. And the key point is that it works. It makes sense and it works. So, of course, if you have a tool, and organizations are keen always to find new ways of making profit or making better experiences for our users, clients, or prospects, then you need to use it. And of course, there is a chance, it's a good chance to use a tool that works and makes sense, and it's kind of easy to understand and to put it in practice.
Okay, so we'll get back to that in a second. So Álvaro, from an academic perspective, if you will, how would you describe behavioral science to somebody who has never studied behavioral science, obviously knows what the word behavior means, but what is behavioral science?
Sure. I would first separate behavioral science from behavioral economics. Behavioral science is like the broader discipline that obviously studies behavior, and it's really huge. And behavioral economics is applying this discipline to business. Okay, so it makes perfect sense for businesses to focus on behaviors, because obviously everything is related to somebody's behavior, be it a consumer, a client, a lead, or an employee. So it, for us, it makes perfect sense. It only seems that most businesses are coming a bit late in terms of, it seems obvious that you focus part of your resources to studying behaviors around your consumers and employees. But it's recent, and finally it's taking place currently.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty huge.
So I mean, you mentioned a few key words there, which is understanding different types of people or people at different moments. Okay, so that's one aspect, obviously, of behavioral science. Now, how closely related is it to psychology from your perspective?
Oh, absolutely! It's completely related. I mean, when you study psychology, it's all you study learning, you study motivation, attention, emotions. And obviously behaviors are all related to all of those elements. Mm-hmm. And obviously it focuses a lot on decision making. Mm-hmm. You know, we are kind of obsessed around behaviors and decisions because obviously they're intertwined. But yeah, you have to have the whole picture. So, for example, we on the cocktail only hire psychologists and some anthropologists because our vision is that you need to have a broad understanding of what the human mind is, human behavior is. So yeah, that's not everybody's vision. That's ours. Yeah.
Okay. What is your view on that, Alvaro? I mean, on the link with psychology, difference between behavioral econ and behavioral science. By the way, both of your titles are behavioral econ, not behavioral science.
Behavioral econ.
Okay, because it's business
Yeah.
related,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So I mean, which makes
No,
sense.
I
for
totally
business.
agree. I mean, it's totally.
You can disagree, by the way. Okay?
I know.
It's okay.
I know. We actually do. We know
We
each
do
other.
a lot. Yeah.
We know each other quite well, so
Okay.
don't worry about that. But in this case, I totally agree. It's totally related with psychology or also sociology, anthropology. So it's behavioral economics or behavioral science is like this packetization of many different sciences. Also, I always say that something fresh that it brings into organizations, into companies, is that we are finally using the scientific method in order to try out new things and to actually finally sometimes make decisions over data, over behavioral data. So for me, I totally agree with Alvaro, and it's this new way. I mean, organizations, we have been talking about being customer-centric for a while already. From my point of view, we have not been able to actually do what we talk or do the talk. But at least with this tool of behavioral economics, of using psychology, of using the scientific method, we are finally at least getting closer to the client. So,
You mentioned behavioral data.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are the challenges of obtaining valid behavioral data? I mean, what are some of the challenges that you face at BBVA as a financial services institution?
Oh, it's a big one with compliance. We are a regulated company, so we need to be really careful with the data that we use. But I would say it's you have a lack of analysis with the perspective from behavioral science. I mean, the data has been analyzed for quite long already. Segmentation has been done from many dimensions, classical dimensions, like age, sex, wealth, whatever. But this new turn or this new way or this step forward is looking to what people do, not only what people are. So it's a twist that actually gives a lot of insight and a lot of power.
And so do you find some challenges then in analyzing it from the right behavioral perspective, or is it defining behaviors and moments?
This is the perspective, because
Okay.
the data is there.
Okay.
So organizations, at least what I know from BBVA, we have the data. So it's a matter of doing the right kind of analysis.
Okay. So maybe, Álvaro, from a broader perspective, since you work across a number of industries, what is your view on behavioral data across industries? Where is it a challenge, more or less, etc.?
Yeah, it is a challenge, and I think one of our obsessions is comparing behavioral data with what people say, right? And trying to understand the whys. So I think there's like a huge opportunity to really understand why behaviors happen. And obviously market research focus is trying to answer that. So basically what behavioral economics, behavioral science tries to do is continue into that direction. But not only analyzing what people, answer in surveys or answer in interviews or focus groups, but adding to that knowledge, the knowledge that comes from academic psychology and anthropology. So I think it tries to fill a void, like a blind spot that's been with us. It has been. I've started in market research in '99. I think from the beginning it was like there's something missing here, like from right at the beginning. And I've been a qualitative, I've been a quant, and I absolutely love what we do and wouldn't criticize that. My boss wouldn't let me criticize because it was. But I feel that there's a blind spot that behavioral science, it's like another piece of the puzzle, because it really, completes the picture with academic psychology, which has been missing really. I don't know any market researchers that spend all the time, reading what Google Scholar papers, and, they're all about methodology, they're all about the discussion guide or the questionnaire, and it's fine. But we have to fill that blind spot, and that's one of the, that's one of our objectives, and I think obviously the end reason for that is answering the why, which is really is more interesting than the what. Why are people, what are their underlying needs? Why are people behaving like they do? Why are people purchasing some brand versus the other? And there's a lot of opportunities there. I think we just started in this journey. I think, yeah.
And a key point there is that we human beings, sometimes we don't even know why we do what we do, or why we decide, why we choose what we choose. I mean, here at the BBS grade in the behavioral design class that I gave at IE, I put up this research, this piece of academic literature where you have an experiment in a retail store where over a few weeks they put every other day French music and German music on the liquor.
In the wine section.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. So then, of course, you can imagine the days with the French music, you sell more French wine, and the opposite. The days with the German music, you sell more German wine. That's pretty straightforward. Everyone knows about the Pavlovs, and that's psychology or classical psychology. But the thing is that the beauty of that experiment is that after the people was purchasing the wine, they were asked why did they purchase or why did they buy that wine, whether French or German, and no one said that it was because of the music. So the learning there is that be careful with what you ask to your clients, because then they will give you information, declarative information, that it's a construct at the very same time that they are asked. So a really important piece of
focus on what they do, not what they say necessarily.
That's it.
Which of course leads us to the link to research, which you mentioned before, Alvaro, into academia, right? So how would you explain behavioral economics to a researcher, and why would it be important for a researcher to be well versed in behavioral science or behavioral economics?
Sure. I would say it's like an intersection with academic psychology, between academic psychology and business. I would also say that it's a discipline that focuses on mental processes, which are really hard to study with qual and quant. It's really hard. And I would add to what Alvaro was saying. Obviously, if you talk to any qualitative researcher, they would say you never ask why. It's a complex discipline. I'm a qualitative researcher also. But nevertheless, even if you're the best qualitative researcher, you can't make somebody have a mental image about what's happening in their brain while they're deciding. It's impossible. And we know that social psychology has been saying that since over 60 years. It's not, even if you try, you can't see your gears working out when you're deciding something. You need to gather knowledge from academic psychology. So that's where academia comes in here and needs to play a bigger role. And it hasn't. I mean, I've been 20 years in market research, qual and quant, and it's not there. I mean, we really need to, it's a discipline that tries, for me, it's a discipline that tries to fill that blind spot, which has been trying to be, worked on. Neuromarketing tried to, focus on this 10 years ago. It failed. I had a neuromarketing company. I failed. I had 4 years. I founded a neuromarketing company. Not many people know this. In 2008, and with 3 years and 4 years, but it was not the answer. It was not. I mean, not technology is only answers for just some specific objectives like pre-testing and But what we find in behavioral science is that it really helps to fill that blind spot. So I would say it's a discipline that works along with market research, quality, quant, and the rest of the team to try to understand mental processes, to figure out why people do what they do. Right?
Mm-hmm. What is your view, Alvaro, on research versus or and? I would argue.
I just say is that I prefer quantitative research, but you need sometimes to do qualitative. It's not only that you need or you cannot do quantitative, is that it's got value, but you need to be really aware of what I was just saying before, is that you need to put the answers into at least a little bit of analysis, knowing that the respondent might just come up with what you want to hear, or what he thinks that you want to hear, or what it's
socially accepted,
confirmation
bias, etc.
Yes. Yeah. You need to be aware of that at least, right? For example, you can change what I was talking about with the wines. Now I'm on TikTok. I'm really hooked to TikTok, and there is this.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. But
why is that?
Actually, and there is a video. This funny video about sexy dancing ladies. If you haven't seen it, you can look for it on YouTube.
I'm not sure I want to search for that on my phone, but okay.
It's just for fun. It's clean, to say so.
Okay.
And it's this guy that goes to TikTok to say, I don't want to see more sexy dancing ladies, and the guy of TikTok says, all right, and he just doesn't pay attention. So the joke there is that they're looking to the data, and at the end he says, I mean, you're looking to these kind of videos. You can say whatever you want. I mean, in your social circles, with your friends, with your family, you will probably say that you see TikTok for the recipes, for the jokes, for whatever you think that it's approvable. But actually, many times you're seeing
the reality is something else.
Yeah, that's your behavior.
Of course.
And I would add to that, just to be clear, obviously, I mean, qualitative research really adds a lot of value. I mean, let's just be clear about that. It just adds value in different angles. I can talk, if you're a good qual, you can really understand like underlying motivation. I can talk about, what motivates me, what my aspirations are, my desires. I can talk about my experiences, my memories, my perceptions and so forth. But the thing that I cannot talk about is how I make decisions and what's happening inside my brain and what's happening with my mental processes. I could talk about mental content, and it's huge and it's fine and it's for branding, it's great, and I need that. But they're different pieces. What I cannot give insights is around mental processes, especially related to decisions. So that's why it needs an additional angle. That's what we're trying to do. Just to be clear that it's not this versus that. It's
right.
different.
What I'm hearing is it's complementary.
Sure, absolutely.
It's filling a void, a blind spot that existed, and it's complementary to quant, qual, or traditional research, if you will. Now, should behavioral science impact research design more? Because I don't know what your feeling is about the current state of the research industry, if you will. Is it something that the research industry is taking seriously, is starting to work on, etc.? What is your view
I
on
will
that?
leave this one for.
You're the client. You can criticize. You know what they're doing. It's okay.
Absolutely. I mean, I work in a market research agency. Like I work inside the cocktail. I work in the cocktail analysis, right, which is a market research agency. So it now has a quant department quality department and a behavioral science department, behavioral economics department. So absolutely. So it's not only about understanding why people behave like they do and mental processing, that's the important angle, but then also is giving input to the quants and the qual around, a lot of cognitive bias when you're measuring data. Obviously, if you're a good quant and a good qual, you know about this, but you need to keep learning about it. So you need to understand how to reduce bias in a survey, in a questionnaire. I see great research in traditional research, and I see terrible research. And there have been great market research quant that have, generated huge impact in business. And I've also seen research that, are the main reasons for bad business decisions. So you have both. So you have to be really careful. So how you ask questions, how do you approach surveys, discussion guides, and I think there's a lot that comes from giving good input from behavioral science to understanding what are people responding. Are people responding at your question? Are you biasing? Because obviously business are going to use that input for their business decisions, so you have to be really careful. And some research companies do, and some others not really.
And how common is it for market research companies to have a behavioral science unit, from your point of view?
I mean, it's not common at all. It's starting to be common. I mean, again, we're at the beginning of the journey. This is just starting.
Let's hope it's not neuromarketing all over again, right?
Yeah, I thought about that. I thought about that, yeah, a lot. Let's hope it's not. Yeah, I don't think so. We don't know the future, but it really needs to, add value in terms. We need better research, I think, and especially when you're talking about decision journeys, how do people decide, digital. When we talk about digital, we haven't talked about that. That's another.
You can talk about whatever you want. I'm just moderating.
Because when you're behaving in digital, ecosystems, it's all about system one. It's all about your intuitions, automatic behaviors. It's all about deciding without reasoning, really. So it's really important. I mean, it's important in every aspect in general, but when you're talking about digital, it's like huge. If you do research related to digital, it should be, really an important focus there. Yeah.
Why do you say it's more important in digital than in the physical world?
Well, have you seen people behaving when they're in their mobile phones? Like they're not on their system too, really. And it's so important to understand that.
Right. But then, sorry, just to clarify my question, your argument is that somebody who goes to a store physically and is looking at the yogurt section, there's a higher likelihood that they will activate system 2 versus if they're buying yogurt on their phone?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so.
Okay.
Because obviously they're tech companies are obsessed with obtaining our attention and
they're doing a good job.
And they're doing a good job. So when you're in your smartphone, especially, it's all about system 1. Obviously, when you're in a store, part of system 1, part of system 2, but our brains are really changing, and it's changing fast. And when you see people behaving in digital ecosystems, it's incredibly. I mean, for me, it makes perfect sense that if you're a research company and you're studying digital ecosystems, you have to have this. And I believe probably that's why the Koch bill really was like the first one that really says, there are other companies that, emotional, neuromarketing is more about emotions and so forth, but like digital is more around, it's not just emotions, it's around understanding how you're behaving automatically when you're in your smartphone, and it's really important. And not all market research companies are getting it. I think some are getting it, and they need to change fast, I believe, yeah.
just to clarify for our audience in case somebody's not familiar with System 1, System 2. So Daniel Kahneman, System 1, System 2, System 1 being more experience-based, System 2 being more rational. 90-10 more or less, 90% of decisions based on experience, 10% rational. We can argue the numbers if it's 82 or 91, nobody knows, so it doesn't matter.
It's impossible to know.
Right, I mean, so, okay. BBVA, considered one of the best digital banks, by the way, in Europe, and some would argue in the world. What is your view about what Álvaro said about digital ecosystem, System 1, System 2? Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
when they're talking about money and banking,
to some extent, because
it's not yogurt. It's not yogurt.
It's not the same. Yeah. When you're on our channels, on our app, one of the best, we have those prices.
I said it instead of you, so you don't have to. This is what the data says.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, it's different because when you're making that kind of decisions, if you're hiring a loan or a credit card or even a mortgage or a deposit, it's not so much from the guts, as Álvaro was saying, but I totally agree in many aspects when you're in the digital world. Actually, to actually add some things that we do that maybe are not so related to market research is that we apply behavioral economics not only to the final client, but also internally to, for example, our officers at the branches. Mm-hmm. Why? Because we understand that, for example, you cannot sell properly something that you don't understand or that you are not motivated to sell properly. So we analyze sometimes not the behavior of the client, the final client, but also our internal behavior as an organization. And that's also very powerful because in some of our markets, in South America, for example, there are tons of sales or there's a huge amount of our relationship with our clients that it's not digital or not so digital as we understand it here in Europe. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of relationship with the clients on the branches still or through our call centers, something that we also analyze. We try to understand through the scientific method and over our science, over the behavioral science, what are the best ways to explain or what are the motivations or the frictions that we find out in order to explain our value proposition to our clients. So we sometimes just go to branches and do pilots where we use one branch as the control branch and then we change the processes of the other branch. We do the same with the call centers.
Super interesting, Álvaro. Can you be a bit more specific? Because I'm imagining things that you might be able to do. Mm-hmm. So obviously you would want to have the person who's communicating with the client, you would want them to have the right information at the right time, using the right language, believing that it's a good product, having some data to back it up if there's a question, FAQs, etc. But I mean, besides that, do you get into nonverbal behavior or smiling?
No,
or
not
you don't
so
get
much.
into that.
No, so much. We get into the tools that we give them. Okay. We get into the explanation or the getting our officers to understand their variable components on their wages.
So their benefit for selling this product.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. So they are motivated in order to sell the right mix of products to our clients. We of course also work on the entregables, on the deliverables that we give to clients in order to just compare the old ones with the new ones.
The pamphlet or the leaflet or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
And the tools that the officers.
I mean, is there anything you want to share about, what would be one or two key takeaways? I mean, what works well? What really works well to motivate
make things
employees?
simple. Make things simple for everyone.
Okay.
Not only for clients, but also for employees. Yes, we from organizations, we tend to be focused on our business and our language, on the deep understanding that we have for example, the financial sector and financial products. Mm-hmm. But people don't understand about assets and liabilities or about a loan or the difference between a credit and a loan and a mortgage. It's like I want money for something else. I don't dream about a mortgage or the best mortgage in the market. I want
about my house. Yeah.
I dream about an iPhone or a pretty car.
Yeah.
But I just want money to buy it. I don't care if it's a loan or a credit or
Or a mortgage.
Or a mortgage.
Okay, understood. Okay, super interesting. Now, you mentioned biases before. I mean, and you know, there are many types of biases, obviously. Álvaro, any particular bias that you think is most relevant that you've seen is a big danger for strategic decisions? I mean, you mentioned before bad research that guides decisions sometimes. Are there particular biases that you've seen in clients that have affected the quality of the decisions? What is your view on that?
You mean clients, companies?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, not consumers.
I'm empathizing with you, sorry.
Sure.
As if I were in the cocktail, your clients. Yes. Okay,
Sure.
sorry, yes.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, there's so much bias inside an organization. So that's really, I mean, it's been the focus of Kahneman. You know, the Kahneman legislative focus around that, and we see that every day. Just put an example. We're a lot into loyalty programs currently. We're doing a lot of projects around improving companies' loyalty programs. And obviously these programs are really costly for companies. And there's so much asymmetry between what the organization thinks around the value of, you know, the cost of discounts and so forth, versus the value that consumers, you know, perceive around that loyalty program. So I'm becoming kind of obsessed with the asymmetry element around what organizations feel, around what people see in value, and then what really value is. So it's huge, and it's all around us. Like, you know, it's like, for example, there's a incredible bias. I don't know what I would call it, system 2 bias. It's the fact that people in organizations tend to feel that their consumers are in system 2, probably because when they're working, most of them, not all of them, but people, you know, companies pay you to be in system 2. Obviously, when you have 20 years, you have a lot in system 1 because of your experience. But if you, in general, you know, they're paying you for mental effort and, you know, discipline.
Somewhat data-based and rational. Yes.
You know, you have to be rational. So there's like an unconscious, you know, asymmetry between, you know, feeling that the consumer feels that way. And it's involuntary. It's not conscious. So part of our job is to, you know, show internally that these asymmetries happen, that every employee tends to feel like that. So you have to be really careful when you're designing, you know, the journey, the experience journey, and, you know, every part of the experience of the consumer, because you tend to feel that they're more in system 2 than they really are. So these are just 2 examples, but there are so many, and yeah, there's so much to do in terms of improving and recognizing. And I really like what Alvaro talks about in some events around the ego killer.
Yep.
The behavioral economics tries, one of the objectives is to also reduce, you know, like opinatica inside companies. And there's so many egos. And when sometimes you talk to your boss or a CEO around, you know, this is your ego talking, wow, that's not easy. But I really enjoy it. I enjoy it. I enjoy it because
when you don't value repeat business.
Yeah, you know, it's like, obviously, you have an ego, you have your social identity, you need to feel admired. You're a human being also, you know, and that's inherited in that. So, but you need to have this talk with people that make important decisions, because obviously they're making important decisions that sometimes are biased, and they need to understand their own bias. So that's a huge topic there also, yeah.
Right, so I'm going to give Alvaro a chance to do a bit of self-reflection on BBVA as an organization, perhaps. So to try to summarize, I heard 3 biases. So the first one, you talked about asymmetry between the concept of value between company and consumer. the second one, of course, was the bias around companies thinking that consumers are in system 2 when they're really mostly system 1. And you mentioned before, this in digital is just geometrically larger.
Sure.
And the third one is the one you just mentioned. So those would be the three. Álvaro, what is your view on biases and strategic decisions at BBVA or more broadly, if you don't want to talk about BBVA? Okay.
No, more broadly, yeah, I would add to those a couple. I would for sure add overconfidence.
For sure.
At all levels. I mean, it's not only when you're drawing a strategic plan, looking forward 5 years, where the company says, okay, we're gonna be the market leaders, we're gonna do our P&L times 3, we're gonna hire 100 people, so you draw these awesome strategic lines. And normally, you don't put into consideration, for example, your competence, how good your competence does their job, or technological disruptions, or the fact that the macroeconomical perspective can change, and it's got nothing to do with your company or with your perfect strategic plan. So I would say that happens at that level when you're drawing these huge strategies, but also on a daily basis for all of us, when you have to hand over whatever, or you're the project manager or whatever, we should be aware of our limitations, because we normally, and it's really human, we are just positive about things. That's something that actually it's desirable and it's neat, and has leaves the humanity here, because as long as we are overconfident, we have
we can dream of a better future.
Yeah, we have undertaken some things that if you are not, we would have never done. So that's desirable, but of course it's got a bad aspect. And
it's
then
also because the Excel is so easy to do. It's
PPTs,
just times 3. Yeah, I know Kahneman talked about that. Nicolas Taleb talked about. It's because the Excel is so easy, just multiply by 3, and there's no friction.
Just
You
to
add.
just to say, the forecast. That it's
That's it.
easy
To
do.
eternity.
And then I would add the sunk cost bias. Is that actually related to project management and investment into certain whatever you're doing, projects or strategic plans just to grow. We tend to, and it's related with what I was saying, is we tend to fall in love with our ideas. So it's really hard for us to back up and to say I was wrong. Mm-hmm. I didn't measure this right, or this guy idea. That's why we would always talk about ego killer.
Yeah.
That idea is better than mine. That's not really human.
Yeah.
It's really hard to actually be in that position, and that's why I think that the scientific method that we bring in, it's so important. Is when you actually get together a team of stakeholders, design, data, behavioral, economics, market research. You put all the efforts together, all the views together, but then you try to actually do experiments with all the information, with all the perspectives, with all the knowledge. If you are able to actually do good pre-testing with a good CRO optimization, taking into consideration all those sciences or all those disciplines, then you can do the experiment or whatever, get the data, and I'll decide over the results of those experiments.
Yeah, because as far as methodology is concerned, it's true that behavioral economics in general is quite iterative focused.
Yeah.
So try, experiment, observe, correct, fail, start again, change again.
That's
So which is different from traditional research, which is we do a huge piece of research.
Sure.
You wait for 3 months. We give you a PowerPoint presentation of 300 slides, and then hopefully you can make a decision.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also about, I feel that traditional research in general, not every time, but mostly tends to give like rational recommendations, not crazy things. And sometimes in behavioral science we come up with that because you try to understand different whys,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like you don't trust this. Well, okay, we've done this behavior, this consumer behavior happens because of this, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we kind of question, are you sure about that? Maybe it's not this. Maybe there's an underlying need that's different than the ones that we thought it was. So our vision is also, you know, we try to recommend. We try to sometimes come up with different hypotheses that are counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe this doesn't make sense, but let's try it out. And sometimes it's really useful for innovation people. Let's say, yeah, you know what, we should have more like a experimentation mindset instead of just let's try this rational thing. I love that Rory Sutherland, the leader of Ogilvy Consultant, one of the best, people that are really obsessed about behavioral science. He says, if you try only rational recommendations, I mean, probably there's somebody else that already tried that. We have to try things that are not, maybe at the beginning don't make much sense, but based on some, hypotheses around, related to human psychology and so forth. So it's also our job is trying to, use that experimental mindset within our organization. It's not easy. It's not easy because there are risks involved and so forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think organizations should experiment more with not so rational ideas, like counterintuitive ideas, obviously based on hypotheses that make sense. And sometimes hypotheses that come from behavioral science don't make much sense for business people. It's like, what do you say? Why?
Why would anybody do that?
Yep.
Yeah, sure. Like, there's so many examples. Then afterward, you see it makes sense. But there's like Red Bull. It tastes bad. It's small. It's really expensive, and it's great. And it's like there's so many market research before that it was this is not going to work. Or IKEA in Spain is not going to work because nobody's going to do that in Spain, and it's IKEA. So there are a lot of examples.
The one you normally talk about, the ING, on the communications of I don't know.
Yeah, the community. That's
really
ING,
tough.
the bank.
Yep.
Yeah, I work with IMD at bank, and sometimes, they had an account that had cashback, and it was really, you could afford it when you have 100,000 clients, but not when you have 1 million clients. That you have 2% cashback if you open an account, 2% cashback of your phone bills and so forth. If you have 100,000 clients, it's feasible. If you have 1 million, it's not feasible. But nobody thought about that, and it was a huge problem. So what do? We have to eliminate that. Okay, it's easy decision for the new clients. You don't include it, but for your current clients, how do you eliminate that? And we came up with a recommendation. We would say, okay, so you communicate that you're eliminating it, and you communicate that you're reducing your interest rate for your savings account at the same time. You give both bad news because you were doing it 6 months later. And it was like, what are you saying? That doesn't make any sense because we were giving a bad news. You're telling me to give 2 bad news. And for us, it made perfect sense because for people, that other element happening is because of the central bank's fault. It's not the bank's fault. And we're not so rational, so we're going to interpret that both things come from you're crazy, that doesn't make any sense. There was no way to testing that because you can test it as, say, clients, and then, no, that was not,
Just
kidding, you couldn't do that. And it was like really crazy, the bank was divided, there were like 15 million euros, we're talking about a lot of money, because they were spending a lot of money. And we were like, yeah, I know it doesn't make much sense, but do you have an alternative? Do you have another idea? It's because the bank wants to save money. Yeah,
we want to make more money or
yeah,
something.
you can't do that. And yeah, it's somebody, really a CEO or whatever had to make that decision, and it worked for nobody, And sometimes you come up with counterintuitive ideas that work, and obviously you should experiment. In this case, you couldn't experiment, but it's that different mindset of, sometimes we are counterintuitive, we're irrational. There are a lot of opportunities for counterintuitive ideas. Just test and experiment. Yeah.
That totally makes sense with the ABCs of behavioral economics. It's the prospect theory from Kahneman and Tversky. It's like from a certain point, gains just don't give you more pleasure because the curve is just horizontal or almost all horizontal, and losses is the same. So it's really counterintuitive, but it makes totally sense with behavioral science.
Yeah, from an academic perspective.
Thank you.
So we're going to be taking questions from the audience in about 3-4 minutes, but I only have about 50 more questions for you guys. So I'm going to choose one, okay? So we're going to try to probably end it with this one. It's probably going to be the last question. So, I mean, the future, okay, well, let's be a bit future focused. What do you think is going to happen with behavioral science and econ in the future? Where do you think it's going? I mean, do you see any trends? If we can't link it to research in a way, but I think if we talk about customer needs at the end of the day, companies adapt to customers, and market researchers work with companies, so they will have to adapt at some point. So if we focus it on that, where do you think it's going? Álvaro, what do you think?
Yeah, for me, I'm really biased on this one because.
But it's a conscious bias, so it's okay.
Yeah. Okay. But what we are pursuing, we are actually using a project where we mix artificial intelligence with behavioral economics, behavioral science.
Okay.
So this is all related with the quantitative part of analyzing the data, the behavioral data.
So the power that you have.
Yeah, that's so we are able to industrialize not only the outcomes but the way that we analyze the data. So we are just trying to move forward, not only doing that kind of analysis that I was saying before ourselves in a manual way, but we are trying to design machines to actually do the work for us. Of course, because otherwise it's not possible. There's so much data, there's so much touch points with the clients that although you can do it and it works and it's got value, there is a lot much more value if you do it with.
If you can leverage AI, no?
Yeah, technology.
What do you think, Álvaro?
I think I'm also biased because I'm really positive.
Okay, we're all biased. Okay, we established we're all biased. Let's proceed.
Overconfidence. No, I think it's going to continue growing. It's going to grow slowly, I believe, because we have to show it adds value.
Okay.
At least in my case, I work in a consultancy. There are a lot of bright people there, so you need to show that this really adds value to projects, clients, and so forth. So we need to prove that, and we need to make sure that we add value in terms of adding academic psychology knowledge makes sense, adds value to clients, and we come up with different recommendations that what the team would come up to, but I see it growing in certain specific areas. Like, as I said before, for example, loyalty. It's huge, and we're growing a lot there. Sustainability is a lot about behavioral economics because there's a huge gap between intention and behavior also. And insurance, we're growing in insurance. We think that there's a huge opportunity for insurance companies to convince people that sometimes insurance is important. And there's a lot of bias.
Activate system 2 there.
Yeah. No, there's so much to do there. There's so much decision making that that goes on when we're deciding not to purchase an insurance because it's so complex, it's so abstract. There's a lot to do there. Banking, I mean, just convincing people to save more money. Banks have not done a great job there. Sorry for BBVA. They're trying, but it's so hard. PFMs have existed for 5 years. They're not doing a good job. People are not, they're saving, but they could save a lot. They're not investing so much as they can do. So there's a lot to do that has to do with complex behavior change. And I think behavioral economics has a lot to say there.
Okay. Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Alvaro.
Thank you.
I have a bunch of questions. I was not checking my messages, by the way, okay? I was checking the questions that were being sent, in case you were wondering. So I have a question from via YouTube, I guess. Are companies ready to adopt a kind of academic work methodology? Usually projects have short time constraints, and academia is more long-term, requires more deeper understanding, etc. So I guess how can you bring the world of academia into market research companies or into projects?
Sure. You have to separate doing research in academia and using academia for business. They're two different worlds. It's not the same. We're in business. We have to work really fast. When we talk about academia, it's just making sure that we use that knowledge into projects. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of value there.
It's not creating raw research.
Exactly. It's not doing your PhD thesis in 2 years. We have to do it in 2 weeks, right? We have to, gather.
It's the accelerated.
You have to understand what academia has to say about that problem, like in 1-2 weeks. Gather all the input and making sure that that's used. But it sometimes organizations are not used to that. They're like, what are you talking about? You have to show that it adds value. But when you show them, the recommendations and the different mindsets and the things that, oh yeah, this makes sense. Mm. So that's what I said before. We have to show that it adds value.
Yeah, but of course, since it's an academia question, I'm going to reply. Working for a university. For every 3 academics that say one thing, there's 1 or 2 that say a different thing, right? So there's no unanimity either. So sometimes that's also a challenge from a client perspective, right? So anyway, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but if you show results, if you show impact.
Of course. That's all you care about, really, at the end of the day, to a certain degree.
Well,
which is fair. It's fair.
Yes and no. I mean, you can have short-term results.
With negative medium-term implications.
That's it.
For sure.
So in the long term, it's not good for you. For example, BBVA, talking about PFM.
Sorry, can you explain what PFM is?
Yeah, sorry. It's normally within your apps in the bank, whether it's on desktop or in your app, you have this analysis tool of your expenditure and some tools to do
personal finance.
Yeah.
Personal finance.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that everybody knows what we're talking about.
Yes. It's trying to help you, understand your spending so you can spend less and save more.
Yeah, save more. That's it. So
drink less beer.
Yeah. So actually, if you are able to show results that are good for the client and for the bank, that opens a lot of doors within organizations. It's not easy. I mean, even within BBVA. We have been working on this for 5 years, and now we are a discipline, a kind of mature discipline. But at the very beginning, it was not easy to go to a business line and say, "Oh, stop! Yeah, we have to analyze. We have to do. You're only doing 1 version. You need to do 5. It's like 5 times the work away."
No, not only that you're going to recommend to some customers that they don't take that loan because they cannot afford it.
Yeah, that's it.
And that goes against the P&L of the bank.
That's it. Then that's what.
But the long-term implication is
that's what I was saying.
Right?
Yeah, that's exactly.
And that's where
Trust,
you get into the important.
That's where when you put into your decisions not only behavioral data, but the bets on BBVA on differentiation from our competition. That it's helping our clients to make better financial decisions, to save more, to have financial health, and then of course help society on sustainability. And you can use all behaviors because those 2 topics are behavioral topics. It's the way that people behave. It's save more and be more sustainable. So we have a lot to say and to add to the processes, to the business line.
Sure. Question? Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. So, in behavioral economics, like we're just starting to kind of put this into businesses right now, and a lot of it is taking a lot from like sort of the same academic studies. We use Ariely, Kahneman a lot of the time. I just kind of wonder, because your point about neuromarketing was kind of interesting about how eventually it went away, like people weren't really seeing it so much. I think behavioral science is here to stay, just based off like what we're hearing and what I've heard in the past. But I'm wondering what the role of I guess, practitioners, people applying it, is to the research community to make sure that like we're keeping fresh with the research and stuff. And sort of, I guess, how do you guys see your roles, I guess, in the greater behavioral economics community to like make sure that like these applied research studies are like spread around?
You think you're saying how do we work with the research community?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we have to work hand in hand. I mean, do we have to? It's another piece of the puzzle. I think one of the reasons that the neuromarketing hype was all about research is not good. You're going to understand like the real visceral emotional things and put this technology here and so forth. And I did it for 4 years now. And the question was the same. We need to go further than just traditional market research. But the answer was not for me. It was not technology. It was more knowledge, academic knowledge, and so forth. But the question remains, right? I mean, the blind spot remains. You can't just understand people's decisions based on what they say, quant or qual. So I think the good thing about behavioral science is not we are trying to say, this is not the right way to go, this is the right way to go. No, it's just another piece of the puzzle. It works hand in hand. There's things that you have to understand based on mental contents, your motivation, aspiration, things that you can talk about, and the things that you need to understand based on mental processes and through academia. And when they work together, it's great. And this is what's happening right now. So I'm with you. I think it's not the same. It's going to be here long term because it's part of it's another gear. So it makes the overall system work better.
It doesn't clash. It doesn't compete.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we actually have initiative within BBVA that is called the Science Hub, and actually from behavioral economics we have put together 3 universities. It's the Universidad de Valencia, University of Maastricht, and also Bogazici that is in Turkey, because we were aiming to actually help our clients to move from liquidity to investment, which is, for example, a problem here in Spain with inflation rates, but in Turkey it's incredible. It's like they are above 40% of inflation rates. So we looked for the experts on that field. So we found Valencia, Maastricht, and Bogazici, and we are actually getting all the knowledge from those researchers into our operations to actually have that kind of knowledge out of consultancy firms and out of our own ideas.
Thank you.
But you do want to keep using consultants. That's
Well, actually,
we have that.
Actually, that's true. That's true. And I have to say,
Except for the pocket.
I have to say, behavioral economics in BBVA started with projects done completely
Outsourced by consultants.
outsourced. Thank you.
When you didn't have the know-how.
We didn't have the knowledge.
Yeah, sure. Other questions? I want to give an opportunity. Anybody else wants to ask a question? Yes. Thank you.
Well, as a young professional that is looking into this field, I had this issue. Well, not a big issue, but when I talk to people that are outside this community, here I guess everyone understands Kahneman and thinking of France as well, whatever. But I want to explain to my father, for example, what am I trying to invest my time in? And I guess you encounter these things with your clients too, right? Some people that have no idea, you come and you say oh, behavioral science, and they're like, what? So if you could explain really quickly, explain I'm 5 or a kid, how would you say what behavioral science is and why it's important? So I can tell my father. Can help me.
All right.
I've tried to explain my girlfriend what it is, and she's still, she's something around the mind and consumption, and I would say it's studying how people decide. Really, really understanding how people decide, and how the context. We haven't talked about how the context of the decision influences, what you do. I would say that's the focus. That's it. Really obsessing about I've been obsessed about that since a long time ago. You know, because what is it? What are the underlying reasons of my decisions? And I really, if you study that, if you study it too much, you could end up in a psychiatrist, because it's like the context is influencing me. I'm not free, you know, without going that way. But really understanding what's the underlying reasons for decisions, and that's really important for business. And I would say that's it. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, I would say something like it's just studying how irrational we are, how fool we are when we make decisions sometimes. So really understand that fact in order to be able to design better operations on your company, better web pages, better apps, better value propositions, better pricing. So it's understanding how silly we are sometimes.
Better environments for your employees.
Yeah.
Just to be possible, so that
Sure.
it's not about selling more always.
It's
no?
not all. No, we're
For
currently carrying out a project for a bank that's improving its intranet, its innovation intranet, and they had all this tech and all the UX and UI, and nobody was using it. It was like you forgot about the human part. It's not. And you're focused on technology, and I talk about the cocktail is it's a digital consultancy, and it's just like, you know what? It's not all about technology, because technology without humans is nothing. So if you have the best internet and nobody's using, because and I would talk about why didn't you have to talk to their egos, you have to show that show that what people are doing, and use that social side and so forth. I was like, wow, and it has to do a lot with focusing on human beings and not just business and strategy and technology. There's a human part also. Important.
Now, I feel myself in the need of explaining something that is not about selling more. So there's this example from BBVA where actually human resources came to us because they had a problem in the corporate and investment banking section, which is a good or appealing part of the bank. Many people want to work there, and the population or the staff, it's really balanced. Half of the staff are women and half of the staff are men. But they detected that when they were doing an internal job posting, the majority of the applications came from males, from men. And that was really weird. It's like, why, if these are appealing jobs and the population, it's 50-50, what's happening here? So we came to help making the hypothesis that women were suffering from the imposter syndrome. Yeah. So actually, the hypothesis goes like women. We see the CEO job and we just click and apply. I mean, what's the worst that it could happen? They say no, and that's it. But it's not the same for women. So we actually changed the way the framing, the context of that decision, just with the structure and with the language, and we did an A/B test, and we actually got 30% more of women applying, just because of those two little changes on the context.
No, I mean, there are many experiments that show that if you show more women in the website, you get more women applying.
Yeah.
You show older, younger. So I think we're gonna. How much time do we have? As much as I want. 5 hours, you said. 5 hours. Okay, good. I'm going to do a Maduro speech. Okay, so I think we're going to wrap up. Any more questions? Sorry. Maybe one more? Yeah?
I think very quickly, I would like to ask Alvaro about any example of an application of behavioral science from a brief of client, because you have talked a lot about the novelty, let's say, about the methodology in terms of research regarding the traditional research of the quality, and if I understand you properly, you insist a lot in using new techniques or a new approach to solve the problems of the clients. Could you share with us an example of how do you approach to that in that different in behavioral economics way.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, let me just repeat the question to make sure that everybody heard it. So the question was if Álvaro could give an example about how behavioral science, I guess, has complemented traditional research.
Sure.
To help solve a business problem in a more holistic and hopefully with a better result. Is that a fair assessment? Okay, thank you.
Sure. So it's very similar to the strategic design methodology, but with some tweaks. You know, we are really focused on the first immersion phase when we gather a lot of, we do a lot of desk research focused on, okay, let's see, for example, we're currently doing a lot of digital adoption projects, right? So why are still people are not using, you know, digital and online and so forth? And so the traditional approach was, let's do well, let's understand the incentives and the barriers. So we complement that with doing a lot of desk research. And there's so much already done by academia around, you know, barriers towards technology, fears around technology, self-efficacy, you know, people scared around the fact that I'm not going to be able to use it, and it's this and this and this and this and this. And then when we, you know, it's a teamwork. We obviously work with the qualitatives in this project, and it was like, for them, it's like opens their minds a lot, because when you do in-depth interviews or focus groups or whatever, most of the people are not so good at, you know, talking about these barriers. And so that's one part. Do a lot of desk, academic inputs towards that initial knowledge, join it with qualitative research, and then next step is working with designers, copywriters, UX writers, whatever, to make something happen, to you know, our deliverable are not PowerPoints, and that's like, we're kind of obsessed with that. That's not what we want to do. I think I got tired of that. My research career was
you deliver Excels now.
Yeah, no, we you know, designs, something that we need to test in real life. We need to, you know, because it doesn't make sense to deliver an insight that then, you know, somebody has to, you have to, if you're talking about behavioral, you know, it's behavioral economics. It's not, again, it's not attitude to not. So we have to make sure that our deliverable is some design that will be tested in real life. So that's kind of different between the normal approach, the research approach, which is, you know, we do a lot of research, here's your PowerPoint, and do what you want with those insights, and then that gets, no, we're, and that's, I'm lucky that I'm inside a digital consultancy firm which carries out end-to-end projects. So we're from the beginning to the end, and we see all the design. And then I would say the third part that's different is the experimental part. We do a lot of experiments. We have to test. We carry out, for digital adoption, for example, we carry out different campaigns. We test it out. We see what works, which doesn't. We iterate and keep on that work till the conversion rate really increases, and we get our bonuses and so forth, and that's great. Or sometimes they don't work, and I get a call from my boss, hey, this is not working. That's really cool, because it's real. It's not just,
that's life.
Yeah, exactly. And we're kind of used, we're used to, just, this is our insight, do whatever you want, and that's fine. It's fine. But this is kind of, it is different in that sense.
Thank you, Alvaro. So I think now we do have to end. But one question for you, Alvaro, to finish. If you want to learn more about behavioral science, somebody here, somebody watching us, somebody who watches this in a few days, the recording, somebody who's bored, has nothing to do and watches this, says, okay, what source would you send them to? What would you suggest that they read?
So if they are into the reading, I would say for sure they need to read Thinking Fast and Slow from Kahneman, and Nudge from Thaler. That's two basics. And then I think someone already mentioned, I would just go through YouTube looking for Dan Ariely. I mean, he's a great communicator, he's fun, he's funny, and I think he explains a lot of grounded and applicable or theory that you can actually use for insurance. He's the CEO, the Chief Behavioral Officer of Lemonade, which is an insurance company. So I would say that's a good start.
You should watch the video, by the way, that presents Lemonade, if not somebody hasn't watched it. Okay, so we're going to close. So first I want to thank you very much, Alvaro.
Thank
Alvaro.
you.
I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank all of you for watching. I want to thank Insights and Analytics for organizing, and we're very happy to do it at IE Business School. Alvaro mentioned before, he teaches in our Bachelor in Behavior and Social Sciences. So obviously as an institution, we think this is a very interesting topic that has a lot of future. I'm not going to try to summarize the last hour, okay? But I appreciate the question about how would I explain this to my dad? Because I think we tend to overcomplicate very often. So I'll try to close with that and try to summarize what both Alvaro said. So it's about understanding the brain, how people make decisions, and the irrational components that we have. So that would be my summary. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.